All right, folks, welcome back into another Mancast. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Ed and Chad coming back at you for another quick one. Let's get it on the ride. Today, we're going to be talking about a few different things that seem to gel pretty nicely these days. Power, perversion, and propaganda, aka the Bidens, the Dalai Lama, and the CIA. Yes, they are all highly connected, and you will find out soon. In order to get there, let's start first with the most ridiculous thing in the news right now, and that is Hunter Biden being paraded in front of media cameras, news reporters, and the world in Ireland right now as essentially the face of the United States when he's one of the most disgusting, corrupt criminals, perverted, narcissistic drug addicts that has ever demonstrated as such by taking video of himself doing all those things ad nauseum. Holy shit, that's disgusting. And this is the man that is the face of our country right now. What say you, Ed?
Well, I say my biggest problem with Hunter Biden, and I'll start with him, is all these videos, because he has this, let's use the term narcissism. He has this bizarre narcissism of filming himself naked while smoking crack with a hooker in a hotel room. So the thing that bothers me the most about it is they're crack whores. You would think a guy with that kind of money could get himself an actual prostitute that's banging and smoking ass hot instead of some crack-driven fucking hoe off the street. So not only is he everything you said, but he's also stupid on top of it.
I think he's also kind of a masochist in a regard, and it's not for a pleasure kind of thing. It's sort of like a self-flagellation, like a corporal mortification. It's essentially like I think he lets himself fall into these really disgusting doldrums because he knows that's where he belongs, because he's a disgusting, vile piece of shit. And unfortunately, he was groomed into being as such because all of the Bidens are as corrupt and disgusting and vile as they get. And if you just take a look at Ashley Biden, Joe's daughter's diary, you'll find out that, Papa Joe took some really disgusting and inappropriate showers with Ashley. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of other shenanigans going on too.
Yeah. So quickly back to Hunter. That's a good point. My guess is too, this is even more frightening.
Sorry, it's just stretching.
My guess too is that he probably has unprotected sex with crack whores to put himself more at risk. I can't imagine what it's like to grow up in a family where your entire life, from the time you become self-aware till the age that he is now in his early 50s, has been an utter and total lie, and you hate yourself because of it. He's as much a victim of his family as Ashley is. It's just that he just looks so, he gets caught doing almost everything that he does. And it seems on purpose. You don't leave your laptop at a repair station with that kind of information on it unless you actually want to get caught. And it's not even subliminal. He did it on purpose. And Ashley, by the way, left her diary in the hotel room so that it could be found. And then the chambermaid and the cleanup crew that actually found the diary went to prison for not stealing anything. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
And James O'Keefe's house was raided because he had copies of it. And even though he turned it into the FBI, but they wanted to make sure to get the hard drives and all the evidence.
That's right.
Same thing as Hunter just randomly leaving a gun in a school zone.
Yep.
Whoops. And then somehow the Secret Service just sweeps in and pushes that right under the rug. Let me get that gun. Let me get this police report. Let's squash all that. Let's pretend this never happened. Yeah, so I think it is very subconscious, but I think when he gets in some of these drug-addled states, he gets super reckless and like he plays that out. As far as Ashley, just quick clarification, she left it behind in an apartment she was renting. It was like in a bag with a few items she left, and then the new person who was the tenant found it.
Is that how that went down?
Okay. And but come on, man, who just leaves their diary? But all of your secrets. I'll just leave that. I'll get that later.
If Ashley Biden would have left behind, say, a dress, and then they would have sold that dress to, say, the highest bidder, they never would have been even arrested. It's because it was her diary that they got arrested, because they need to shut those people up because they probably read the diary. So they're going to be in prison for at least as long as Joe Biden's alive.
Well, they don't want to publish, but there's something else that we saw that has been proven and seen because of the Hunter laptop is the fact that he has sent numerous texts and correspondence to Ashley, for one, complaining about having to pay all the bills of the family, complaining about having to split all of his money with dad, complaining
The
about
big guy.
Yeah, the big guy. Complaining about how he has to he's the one that's out there like the point man, the bag man, and doing all the dirty work on behalf of the family. So there's that, completely him just admitting it, right? And then you hear about Bob Alinsky, 10% for the bib guy. You see these correspondence on there, and now we find out something even more juicy. Ed, would you like to take a look at a video clip with me?
Sure, let's do that.
All right. So just to kind of start it off here, a former Obama staffer, he was on, I think he was on Air Force Two, and he was a stenographer for Joe Biden, and he would, write down everything that took place with other reporters, with questions, stuff like that, so that there was a record of it. And let me just take a quick look.
Former Obama White House stenographer, that is an official White House position, we just learned. Mike McCormick is his name, and he's alleging that Joe Biden knew his son's every move, including his international business deals. Here is McCormick on Fox News.
I've left the White House. I'm writing books, and I get a hold of the Hunter Biden laptop from Marco Polo. They're a nonprofit, anti-corruption nonprofit. About a year and a half ago, I started writing a Substack based on what I find. And then I go back over what I knew happened when I was working for Joe. I found the transcript that I wrote about that briefing. That's when Jake Sullivan starts talking about fracking. And because of what I'd read in the laptop and reported in my Substack previously, I'm like, wait a minute. Joe Biden knew Hunter Biden was already on the board on April 18th. Joe Biden knew. He directed Sullivan to go back and talk to the press. This is a conspiracy. This is a crime. This is public corruption.
McCormick also said he went to the FBI with this information and nothing yet has been done.
According to Fox News Digital, Hunter Biden's former business partners and associates frequented the White House 80 times when President Obama was still in office and even met within Vice President Biden's team on multiple occasions. President Biden has consistently denied having any knowledge of his son's business ventures, but visitor logs that Fox News reviewed tell a somewhat different story.
Well, that's a hell of a number.
So this guy is saying that, he went to the FBI with this information. The FBI is like, we don't care. And shocker. And right. So here we have actual now evidence of the fact that Hunter Biden's business partners came to the White House 80 times for some reason. That's interesting. Why would they need to go to the White House? I don't understand. And then why would they need to have at least 17 meetings? With Rosemont Seneca, vice president. So, 17 meetings. So you have an actual, partner of Hunter Biden, 17 meetings with Joe Biden and his aides. And meanwhile, Papa had no idea.
Of course, because Joe Biden's the most honest man that's ever lived, as we all know. It's not like he's ever been accused of, plagiarizing entire speeches. Biden, as a human being, is a total piece of shit. There's no other way to put it. If you voted for him for president, do us all a favor and hit yourself in the head with a hammer a couple of times to remind you never to do it again. I was hoping, I think he's not going to run again because they're never going to let him. He's clearly declining even faster than they expected. We've seen now, anybody who's paying attention, the videos that we're seeing coming out of Ireland just show how demented he's actually becoming. He went off on a child who asked a simple question about, what are the steps for success? And he goes off about the COVID-19 vaccination. And then his idiot son has to step in and go, that's not what she said, Dad. This is what she said. And it's embarrassing.
I mean, you have to be completely demented and full of senility just to go to Ireland to celebrate peace when you're a giant fucking warmonger. So just from the jump, and then to take your crackhead, pervert son and flaunt him about, that's something to do. Yeah, dude, this guy's he's barely holding it together, and they're looking to move him aside. I think Gavin Newsom's going to be the guy soon. So watch how that works out.
So I think Gavin Newsom, if he runs for president, will win. And he'll win for the exact same reason that Justin Trudeau wins in Canada. Because they're good looking. And that is the only reason. Period. That is the only reason.
It's because of who they are, who they're connected to, and where they came from. These guys are all World Economic Forum. Those guys, both of those guys are World Economic Forum, junior leaders. They came up through all that. They're all part of the machine.
Very aware.
And yeah, it doesn't hurt to be extremely good looking. So.
But it works. Look, the Kennedys all got elected because of their looks. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but I'm saying that if Justin Trudeau looked like Richard Nixon, he wouldn't continue to get reelected in Canada. He just wouldn't. And by the way, they might as well just call him King Trudeau at this point, because between him and his father, they've been ruling Canada for the last 2 generations.
Well, that's true. So,
and Newsom, it's Nancy Pelosi's friggin' nephew.
He was at one point, I think, by marriage, and now but it's obviously a very connected web. So, for sure.
But his policies are literally destroying California. And that will not stop people from voting on him, because you know what? They're going to look at a picture of him, and they're going to look at a picture of Trump. And since most people, and this is why we have such poorly elected people in our country, this is what I've always said. You should have the right to vote, but you should also not be able to vote if you don't know the basics, right? There should be a bit of a litmus test, just a couple of questions. And if you get all of them wrong, you're not allowed to vote or something. You can't just show up to vote and simply vote for a Democrat or Republican based on nothing other than they're Democrat or Republican. And that's how we get ourselves. Because let's face it, the vast majority of people don't know a single thing. What people think they know about Donald Trump is literally 98% bullshit. It's all lies, all of it. And by the way, for the right, most of what they believe about Obama is bullshit too. That's all it is. We just get fed so much horseshit constantly by the media that nobody knows the truth. And most people, I'm not even picking on the people necessarily, because if you got a wife, couple of kids, you're running your own business, or you're working, trying to make your moves and get up in life and provide more and more and a better and better life for your family, you're not going to sit down and do hard research another 10 or 12 hours a week so that you can keep up with this kind of stuff. But I at least, and it'll never happen, but I really like to see, you cannot campaign except for, say, 2 or 3 months from election day. That's all the time you have to campaign. No other time than that. You cannot do commercials. PACs aren't allowed to do commercials, and no more corporate money ever again, period. If you can't raise your money on dimes and dollars from individual people, then you just can't run your campaign. Tough shit. But you don't get to have one guy like Zuckerberg come in and drop a couple $100 million on you, and then you're at his bidding for the entire time that you happen to be president. It's horseshit.
Yeah, fair points, man. Absolutely. If we could drive that out of politics, that'd be great. Well,
it's common sense, which means don't ever do it.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
No.
Another person who's persona is bullshit, apparently. And that's, interestingly enough, the name of a TV show that I'm going to show a clip of in a moment. But before we get to that one, let's talk about this man, the Dalai Lama.
Oh my God, he is like a god on earth, Chad. He is probably the most amazing pedophile that has ever lived.
Well, that's what a lot of people try to pretend. They act like he's this, incredible man. And meanwhile, you find out that he's got a really dark history. But I have a feeling it's a lot darker than we even knew. Because by the watch of this video, I think his age, how old he is, the senility. Speaking of Joe Biden, I think the Dalai Lama is now so senile that he's literally like looking to make out with a child in front of people because he doesn't think about the fact that people are watching.
Then I think finally here also. And shut my tongue. And shut my tongue.
Right.
That's not the first time he's done that.
That's right. There is something very seriously wrong with this man, and not because of his age, because he has a deep, dark sickness and perversion that can never be fixed. He is wired wrong. Men or women who want to have a sex or petting or however you want to preface it with a child, there's something seriously wrong with you, and you can't fix pedophilia. And psychiatrists they've given up on that a long time ago. They know that it is a perversion and a sickness that runs so deep that it can't be helped. You cannot redeem these people. You cannot redeem a rapist, for instance. That's why I don't understand. I find it very interesting. Isn't it odd that you're more likely to get time? You're down on your luck. You're having a hard time. You rob your local 7-Eleven for a few bucks just to try to get through. Or maybe you're a drug addict and you're Hunter Biden and you need some money to go and get your next fix. And you brandish a gun. You're going to do a minimum of 5 years, no matter what, for the gun charge, because that's federal law. And then you'll probably do a couple of more years on top of that for the actual crime itself. Meanwhile, a pedophile who gets caught cold-handed or a rapist, they'll probably be out in 2 to 3 years. They're going to do half the time of this other person who harmed no one. It is the most bizarre thing to me. And only because at the highest levels of our government and the highest levels of our elitist society, that there is so much perversion when it comes to pedophilia and sexual acts. I think because they have so much and they have so little to worry about, that the only way to get the rocks off is to do these bizarre things, right? It's just a theory of mine, because it seems that the number of people at that level that have these severe perversions, the percentage of those people seem to be much higher than general population. There has to be some kind of correlation between having everything you could ever want in your life. You need to find a thrill somehow. And maybe that thrill is to do just more bizarre, wild stuff sexually. Because, I mean, how do you explain Jeffrey Epstein? How do you explain his connections? There's no way to even connect him to the amount of money he had or how he even had it to begin with. It's bizarre. And then they protect him. And then when they can't any longer protect him, they kill him so that he can't talk about it. This is a sickness that is so ingrained. And this Dalai Lama is about as elite as a human being could ever get on earth. I don't know if he's that senile or he just doesn't fucking care because he doesn't think anybody can do anything about it. And by the way, they're not going to.
Well, interestingly enough, the Dalai Lama and Jeffrey Epstein both worked for the CIA. So,
well, look at that.
Let's take a look here. So
The very purpose of our life is happiness.
Ever since these Tibetans fled their homeland to the threat of the communist Chinese in 1959, their leader, the Dalai Lama, has been traveling the globe with a trite greeting card philosophy and a warm smile, desperately trying to enlist help in his quest to free Tibet and return to power.
I believe, you see, every human being have the potential to develop compassion.
This idea that he's a humble spiritual man with just a robe and a bowl and a prayer bead isn't really what the Dalai Lama is all about. I'm Michael Parenti, a political writer, author, and noted after-dinner raconteur. He headed a social system that was exploitative, terribly unequal, and terribly brutal.
Tibet was Shangri-La. That is, if you were the Dalai Lama. No wonder he wants it back. He had a palace and a pile of servants. The rest of the Tibetans lived in huts and ate roast barley meal and yak butter tea.
You had a privileged priest class living in utter luxury and opulence, and you had a mass of serfs living in utter misery.
And if you broke the law, then torture and mutilation, including eye gouging, the pulling out of tongues, and even disemboweling were reportedly common punishments. The Dalai Lama sounds more like Mo Howard than a saint. As this State Department internal memo reveals, the Dalai Lama at one time took $180,000 a year from the CIA for his living expenses, and $1.5 million a year from the spy agency to finance Tibetan guerrilla operations against the Chinese, which included running a covert guerrilla training center in Colorado. Maybe they were non-violent covert guerrillas.
Violence and telling lies, cheating, these, I believe, basically against human nature.
To be fair, the robed one isn't taking money from the CIA any longer. Once people found out, it became a bit of a PR problem. So with no more handouts from government bureaucrats, the Dalai Lama had to find a group of people even more gullible. Hey, there's Richard Gere. He was great in American Gigolo. And oh, there's Steven Seagal. He was great in, he's way into the Dalai Lama.
The only thing that is of great importance in my life is to try to become a better human being, to ease the suffering of others and make the world a better place. I don't care about power or fame or money.
Fuck.
they had this show called Bullshit. And they're kind of poking fun at the fact that Hollywood, and so many white liberals just applaud this guy, laud this guy, and treat him like a deity. As it turns out, though, he was taking millions of dollars from the CIA, and he was helping to train Tibetan guerrilla fighters in a Colorado training facility. And this guy here has uncovered the fact that he lived in insane opulence in a palace, ate whatever he want, had whatever he want, while all of his citizens were sheer peasants.
Yeah, desperately poor people.
And Gillette saying basically they basically ate roast barley meal and that's all they had. All their meals were the same thing.
But sometimes, depending on season, Chad, there were certain kinds of bugs they could eat too.
Right. So that's fair. And I guess there was brutal torture that took place too under his regime. So yeah, it doesn't seem like he's everything he's cracked up to be. Shocker.
Oh yeah, that's a real shocker, right? So the Dalai Lama, before they fled, their people, as you pointed out, were absolute peasants, and they were royalty, and they lived in opulence that is hard to describe. And they're treated as deities, all of them, not just the Dalai Lama, but all the monks around him. And by the way, they are, for those who are listening, all you have to do is look it up. They were absolutely horribly brutal to the peasants that they ruled over. If you did something that they didn't like, They stripped you naked and strung you up and beat the flesh off your body, most people, until they were dead. They were horrible. And when they moved, the Chinese came in, took over that area, and those people are living hundreds of times better than they were under these a godlike Dalai Lama and these monks. So now I'm no fan of China. Obviously, their civilization does not jive with my thought process. But when China comes in behind you and the people that you left behind are now living 100 times better than they were under your rule, what does that say about how horrible you actually are?
So you made the point about when you have everything in the world and there's nothing you can't get, you tend to people will push the envelope to something crazier
right.
and freakier and more hard to get because they want to basically prove that they can get anything. And I think so many guys like that, like Catholic priests, like people who are in these high positions of power that can get anything they want, make people do anything they want. They push that envelope. And I think the Dalai Lama is no different than the Pope and, a bunch of the priests and, all kinds of people in those positions that have done that. So I think this is the veil. He's just old and senile and the veil got lifted, and that ain't the first kid he's had suck his tongue or try to get to suck his tongue. And I have a feeling that's a first step to sucking some other things, just saying.
Okay. And let's be honest. You're 100% correct about that. If this is what he is willing to do in public, imagine what he's doing when no one's around. You know that those monks are bringing him all the little boys that he wants whenever he wants them.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of, if there is ever a crime that you should be able to kill someone on sight or hang them from a tree right in their own backyard, it's that.
Yeah. Well, there's a kind of a segue here where I don't know if you've heard the news story about Jamie Dimon. He's the big Wall Street guy. He's Citigroup, or he ran that one. But he's a big wheel. He's been in and out of, administrations and so forth. He basically helped create the too big to fail system. But what's interesting is the connections between Jamie Dimon. Now we're finding out because he's been deposed for something else, but and he's run these banks that have basically funneled money for Jeffrey Epstein. Now we find out that the connections are way deeper than that. Like he's not just looking like he was a criminal by letting Epstein, put all this, dirty money, run it through the banks and stuff through him. But it sounds like he was connected on a deeper level in more of like a scheme kind of thing.
And so it is clear that Jeffrey Epstein was working with the intelligence community, and the reason why they had that sex island and the Lolita Express was to compromise powerful people, and so that the intelligence community or the whoever is the establishment that really runs things, it could have compromat on those people, and so now they can control them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Including people like princes and ex-presidents, right?
Mm-hmm. But again, it's more than Epstein wasn't just about sex trafficking. He was also making powerful people a lot of money, and he was involved in a lot of extreme financial crimes, including massive Ponzi schemes and money laundering, and pretty much every financial crime under the sun. He was involved extensively, not unlike Robert Maxwell, right? Who again had his own links to intelligence services. And involved in things like the Promise Software scandal, but he was also involved in a lot of financial criminality, which only really came to light after his death. And it's really not that different with Epstein. But what this particular case in the Virgin Islands is exposing is that JP Morgan executives knew that Epstein was not doing what they said he was doing. So, for example, it's already come out as part of this court case that the financial activity on Epstein's accounts at JP Morgan was not consistent with any sort of client-based business. So at the time, Epstein was supposed to be a financial advisor to billionaires, but there was no evidence that he had any sort of client-based business at all based on his financial flows. And it was flagged, his financial activity was flagged on numerous occasions and nothing was done. And as I note in my article, there's two groups that are responsible for Jamie Dimon being in charge of JP Morgan. One of them, they're both connected to organized crime. One of them is John W. Kessler, who's Leslie Wexner's right-hand man and worked directly with Epstein on numerous occasions. This is complete documented fact. And the other person is a man named James Shine Crown, who comes from the billionaire Crown family that has run since the 60s the weapons manufacturer General Dynamics. And his father, Lester Crown, was a close associate of Leslie Wexner since the early 90s. At least, and James Shine Crown was the top guy at JP Morgan's Risk Policy Committee through his position on the board of directors. So all of this, the fact that the top policy making body for risk management, it was this guy at the top, and then they're letting Epstein get away with all the stuff when it's flagged by middle management. The top management says, oh, no, nothing to see here. And then you have executives joking, Epstein's a sugar daddy. And you have Jess Staley, a top executive at JP Morgan, exchanging emails with Epstein, talking about Disney princesses, saying, it was nice to meet Snow White. Ooh. What character do you want to meet next?
Wow.
I mean, this is insane. And so when you consider the fact that the same people that created essentially Jeffrey Epstein put Jamie Dimon in charge of JP Morgan Chase, it's very hard to believe that Dimon did not know what was going on, because ultimately, who does he have to answer to at the end of the day? The same people that put him in his cushy job at the top of the Wall Street pyramid of power, right? And so if they ever come knocking and say, well, we want you to ignore what this guy does, why wouldn't he do it? I think it's very naive to think that there isn't some sort of problem there for Jamie Dimon. And we'll see if he gets questioned about any of these people like Kessler and the Crowns.
But I can't imagine what it's like for someone to have to grow up that way, like a Hunter Biden or a Ghislaine Maxwell, and how that literally alters the way that your brain would normally work to this really bizarro set of circumstances that don't happen to too many normal people.
No doubt. But this Jimmy Dore show here, and you got Whitney Webb on here. She's a kind of an expert in the whole Epstein saga, and she's talking about how Jamie Dimon from Citibank, how he was involved in all this stuff. But there's this guy Robert Rubin, who was an official who worked under his Secretary of Treasury under Clinton.
Oh, Clinton, right.
And also then he was the head of Goldman Sachs, but he was the one that got Glass-Steagall taken out, and he was Robert Maxwell's, partner in all this stuff. So not Les Wexner, but Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Les Wexner's involved in this because I think he's like the guy who owns like Victoria's Secret and all that. But anyway, so now we're finding out through all these revelations of Jamie Dimon that he is connected to the CIA, and we're finding out that all these Rubin and Dimon and Epstein were actually involved in the Iran Contra, and they've been involved in all kinds of like crazy, like covert shit for the CIA. So they're completely in league with the CIA. Epstein was 100% a CIA covert operative. He was probably working for other intelligence agencies too, mind you, but that's why he got away with so much. And that's why when he first went down for pedophilia, it ended up getting reduced to something completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I think he was charged with stealing one piece of candy from a candy store.
Well, and that's that's how, yeah, well, I mean, I guess as soon as that case basically hit the desk, they tried to dismiss it because the prosecutor at the time said that this is above my pay grade. He's intelligence, so everybody knows freaking that Epstein was in the CIA. There's no doubt about it. He was definitely working for them. He was running honey traps to, ensnare people so that, he could use, blackmail against them. But he was also doing all kinds of financial crimes in order to create black money, to do stuff off the books illegally. And he was hired, him and his cohorts to even run guns for Ronald Reagan. So it goes deep. It goes really deep, man. It's crazy. I can't believe it, but I can.
Well, yeah. The corruption that is in our government isn't anything new. And the cries of some of this weird sex trafficking and pedophilia shit has been around for a long time too. These people are despots, man. There are some good people that are involved in our government, but they're more the exception than the rule. And we talk about it all the time. Our government is actually run by bureaucrats and lobbyists, not by the politicians themselves. The politicians really don't do anything. I mean, if you they run, politicians concern themselves only with the committees that they're on, and then all they do is spend all day in these committees accusing people of things or trying to get information out of people that are in certain positions of power as bureaucrats in our government. And if anybody hasn't been paying attention, the first person that can show me somebody who actually answers a question will be the first time anybody saw somebody answer one of those questions. It is such a dog and pony show. Isn't it funny how if you tweet something that's off-colored or wrong, the cancel culture comes for you, right? And from their perspective, not saying that it's generally wrong, but from their perspective. However, one of the things that I've noticed recently with all the people that is particularly now with the Biden administration that they're trying to put forward to get nominated and they go in front of these committees, they're being asked directly, didn't you tweet, this horrible thing that you tweeted? And then they read it back to them and they go, well, that's my personal account. So I'm not going to talk about my own personal account. I would never do that on my official. What? How do you get away with that? And even Jim Jordan backs down when they say that. Well, there you go. It's just it's their own personal account. So they can use the N-word or they can just throw anything around that they want to, and they can hate on anybody and call them names. Actually, we got look at a King Jeffries. Jesus, man, what do you got to say to actually get removed from what you do in Washington? What was uncovered about this guy? It's absurd, and they don't. There are two sets of rules, and it is becoming more and more noticeable. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Jeffries is way out of line with the stuff that he was saying. He literally was calling Jewish people kike and saying that they were the evil of the world. He's friends with Louis Farrakhan, and he believes in what he preaches, and he's written articles about it. And yet, now that Nancy's going down, he is the #1 Democrat in the Congress. And what are they going to do about all this stuff that was just uncovered? Nothing. Not a word.
Right under the rug.
Yep.
So speaking of brushing stuff under the rug, though, just to jump back real quick to Epstein, and then we can move along. I don't know if you saw this latest interview of Cindy McCain, John McCain's widow, on C-SPAN. She's on this initiative to stop human trafficking, and she basically just blurts out the fact that everybody in Washington knew what Epstein was up to. Oh yeah, we all knew what he was doing. You couldn't get any law enforcement, apparatus to do anything. And it's like, well, bitch, you could say something. You got all the money and the microphones and everything else. Your damn husband was running for president. Why didn't he say something?
Right. What the hell is she talking about?
So, but I believe she's telling the truth. They all did know. The truth. They've all been ensnared in it some way or form or fashion.
But the irony here is, while she is telling the truth, I have no doubt about that. But at the exact same time she's telling the truth, she's also admitting culpability by saying nothing and just letting it go on without saying a word, when her husband was one of the most senior sitting senators in the United States, a war hero, and he had a microphone anytime he wanted one, as well as her. And what did she do by her own admission? Nothing.
Many a times during that period, he had subpoena power. They had the majority. He could have opened investigations.
These people are
but
corrupt,
McCain's a corrupt. He was a corrupt crook too, man.
It took Hillary Clinton to actually be a bigger war hawk than that piece of shit was.
True story. Yeah.
That guy would have gone to war. Bolton's the worst of them all. Bolton would go to war against an elementary school with the full force of the U.S. military just because somebody mentioned we should. That's how out of control that piece of garbage is. And then
under Obama, under Obama and Bolton, we blew up a lot of elementary schools, bro.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Obama, who was so peaceful and so kind, 26 8,000 drone strikes and estimates between 4 and 8,000 civilian children and women dead because of those drone strikes. Notice how the media never really covered that.
Well, and that's the irony of, freaking Hunter and Joe over there in Ireland to celebrate peace whenever, they're about to start World War III, all because of their shenanigans in Ukraine. And, but I what's that?
Okay. Because the point that you're saying about that, and that, of course, because of Jack Teixeira, we now find out that we actually have boots on the ground, and everything they've been telling us about that war is an utter lie. It's a total lie. We are going into World War III here, and it's because Joe Biden and that administration illegally, without an act of Congress, mind you, is starting World War III. That's what they want. They want to decimate Russia, period. And they're willing to spill American blood and act in an illegal manner to make that happen. And it's disgusting. And this Jack Teixeira kid, if you ask me, he's a hero. He's an idiot for what he did, but he's exposing them for what they are. And the question is, will the American people give a shit?
Well, you know me, I'm Mr. Conspiracy Theory, and immediately I thought,
it's bullshit. How did this kid get that?
CIA planted this. The CIA wanted him to find it. They wanted him to share it. They set him up, and this is
they had a handler.
This kid ruined his life over it, and they wanted it to be leaked because, for some reason or another, I guess so that we would fund more of the war. We wanted it to see, oh shit, like this is worse than we thought, because all you hear is propaganda otherwise, that Russia is falling apart, Ukraine is winning the war, and all of our efforts are a good cause, and we just got to keep up the good fight. Meanwhile, if you actually know what the fuck you're talking about, and you've actually done any kind of research for yourself and looked at, anything other than echo chamber propaganda, you find out that no, Russia's doing quite well. They have all of the manpower they need, and they're not going anywhere. They're going to continue to battle unless we decide peace agreement and put a stop to this, which seems like China is trying to work out, because we won't. And unless we do that, Russia's just going to keep going until he freaking takes all of Ukraine, until Putin takes all of Ukraine, and Ukraine is being used as a proxy in all this. So,
well, of course they are. Well, we put Zelensky in there so that we would have control to do whatever we wanted there to begin with. We're the one who provoked everything that is going on here. We started this. There is no other way. Now we're finding out through the stuff that I'm not even going to call it the Teixeira leaks. My heart goes out to this kid. This was a 21-year-old kid who had one of the highest security clearances that you can get. And he was a part-time Air National Guardsman. Are you friggin' kidding me, man? That's just the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. If that kid, and his age doesn't bother me here, but someone that has that kind of security clearance and they're a part-time Air National Guardsman can get that kind of clearance, then what's the point of having top security clearance to begin with? How did he ever get that? My guess is he probably really didn't. He had a handler. This was all set up. We're probably never going to know the truth because we generally never do. And as you know, and I know, what they're going to do, the hive mind is now going to go to work. Already, mainstream media is making it seem like they're already branching out, and the story is already unfolding, that this is the most serious breach ever. And that we don't even really need to pay attention to what was actually leaked, because that's probably not really true. It's anti-propaganda, right? It like somehow it's bad thing that these top secrets got out, except for the top secrets really aren't true anyway. So which one is it? So, and if they're not true anyway, then why is this kid arrested and going to jail for revealing nothing? So the whole thing's become so bizarrely weird at this point, where they're talking about on the news, nothing to see here, and this is all okay.
Well,
we have a rogue president. Quickly, let me finish this. Who started a war without the approval of Congress. That is treason, and you can hang from the neck for that. And nobody seems to care. And where is the outrage from the Republicans?
Yeah, you were talking about, going back to the fact that I think it might be just a conspiracy that the CIA actually planted the docs and the whole deal. Is when you look at the news report that was done, I think it was the Washington Post, and the author who did this freaking shitty ass report, which is blatant propaganda. He's a known propagandist for the CIA. He's carry their water since the Iraq War. And it's so blatant because when you read the article, he says shit like when WikiLeaks spilled a huge trove of State Department cables 13 years ago, it gave the world a sense of what American diplomats do each day. The sharp elbows, the doubts about wavering allies, and the glimpses at how Washington was preparing for North Korea's eventual collapse and Iran's nuclear breakout. No, that's not a fucking single thing about what Assange said. The whole WikiLeaks thing was about the fact that we were torturing people, murdering civilians, and that the whole war was simply just to funnel money into the military industrial complex out of the American tax base. That's fundamentally what the whole thing was about.
Yes.
And this guy's trying to characterize it as it was about sharp elbows of diplomacy. What the fuck, right? So then it's worse. He goes on a little bit later to talk about Snowden and basically what Snowden's leaks amounted to. You can go check it out yourself. Dore covers it. Glenn Greenwald's really crushing it. And just he's all up in arms because he's the one that broke the Snowden case, and basically it's he tries to whitewash it as well. The cache of 100 or so newly leaked briefing slides of operational data on the war in Ukraine is I'm sorry, that's a different one. But he's whitewashing this whole thing too, and that tells me they got their guy to do their thing, and that this was all part of the plan. That's my theory. So
yeah, and of course with the news agencies, and one of the things that to me is a very quick outlier that should signal anybody who's paying attention, and for those who aren't as acute to paying attention for these things, there's a little bit of advice. If you watch one news agency explain it in one manner, and then another news agency explain it in another manner, then another news agency change the story a little bit more, this is done on purpose. And the reason this is done is because when the government get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, what they do is they release 100 different or more stories about what may have taken place, so that nothing is ever true, or most people can never come to a clear conclusion because there's so much mud in the water, and they do it on purpose. And it is actually a tactic that they use routinely. They look at Benghazi, look at all the misinformation that was fed from our government into our dutiful media. Our media is supposed to protect us from the government. They're supposed to be the fifth pillar, and that is long gone. America is, and I mean this, there is no doubt left. America is the largest propaganda machine in the history of this world, and almost everybody in this country knows little to nothing about the truth because of that propaganda machine. And they take our eyes off of everything with stupid shit, right? You can go down a rabbit hole with all this stuff, but I mean, we're spending more time on transgender issues than we're, in fact, that we're on the precipice of World War III.
That's all part of the voodoo, man. It's all part of the psyop. It's crazy because they've infiltrated all of the media and all of the Hollywood and everything, and we know this. That's been declassified. Operation Mockingbird. We know the CIA made a concerted effort. We've also seen the updated version of that in all of social media through the Twitter files. We've seen the FBI and the CIA have all completely infiltrated all of these social media companies. We know that they do the NSA and the Edward Snowden leaks. We know that they spy on everything you do. Come on, guys. This is so freaking obvious.
Right. It's not even a conversation anymore about it may or may not. It's an absolutely yes. And when are we going to stop playing this game with them?
The biggest mistake Trump made, as far as Trump is concerned for himself, was by going at the CIA. It's just like freaking Schumer, that scumbag, said. The CIA, has 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. And that's exactly what the concerted effort was to do immediately.
And still is.
And he just, because he's not apparently, whatever corruption I'm sure Donald Trump is a part of, he's not in that group. He's not in that circle. And so, they just tried to get him out as quickly as possible. And he was calling them out and telling truths about him. They don't like that. Right. So,
and he did do that, by the way. He really did, not to interrupt your thought, but he did call them out and say, I'm going to get rid of the swamp creatures, right? Mm-hmm. He called them all out onto the floor and provoked a fight, and he got one.
So they set about to destroy him ever since, and they were doing it from the jump. But, because Hillary Clinton, that was their shoo-in, that was their person that they wanted to be installed because she's part of the cabal. But and they have all kinds of compromising shit on her, and they probably got lots of evidence of all those dead bodies and stuff. But anyway, so the interesting thing about what happened with Trump was the first time he was impeached was for the perfect phone call with Ukraine, where he basically was going to withhold, $1 billion in aid if they didn't investigate what was going on at Burisma with Hunter. And so they made this out to be the biggest story on the planet, that it's a quid pro quo. Oh no. And so they go on about this and they're going to impeach the man. Obviously it doesn't work. It's such bullshit. But the whole thing was just exactly what Joe Biden had done, a mere 5 years prior. And 2014, and there's video, I'm going to show it right here.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And
in 2014, Joe Biden, and he's bragging about it here in I believe 2016. He got a prosecutor, the top prosecutor of Ukraine, fired because he was investigating Burisma, who Hunter Biden was the new board member of.
Oh, the corruption with the Bidens is that's certainly nothing new.
Well, he's talking about how there was a $1 billion loan guarantee, and, right. He had a commitment from the leaders of Ukraine that they were going to fire this prosecutor who was investigating Burisma,
his son,
in 2014, who his son was sitting on the board of, right, and there's all kinds of shenanigans going on. And so he tells them that he's going to withhold that money, and they go, you don't have any authority. You're not the president. And he goes, well, call him. And he's basically like swinging his dick, trying to talk big like he's a bad man. But he is admitting to the fact that he had a prosecutor fired by a quid pro quo.
Yeah.
So how is that? How did people not see that? It's fucking amazing.
Because they don't want to.
Well, and it doesn't get reported to them either, by the way.
Well. Even if it is reported, or even if they were to report it, we learned, if we learned anything through COVID, that getting the sheeple in this country to literally go along with whatever you say is not exactly hard to do. There are still people clinging on to the things that they were told during COVID, right? We see them. You see people with masks on and all that. It's insanity. And so one thing that the media did extremely effectively well was get a very large portion of the populace to hate a man that they literally know nothing about, just cuz.
Well, they do these, you know how they do the fact checking, right? Quote unquote fact checkers. And they're all horse shit. And like USA Today was the one I looked at to see how they would try to spin and explain away the fact that Joe, got the prosecutor fired who was investigating his son's company. And it's the mental gymnastics are absolutely just hilarious, and it's amazing that the shit they go through. Well, while this did happen shortly after Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma, we assure you those two things had nothing to do with each other, and that the real reason why he was fired was because he wasn't actually going after any corruption. He hadn't tried to take on any major corruption cases in the 1 year that he had been there, except he was literally in the middle of an investigation on Burisma, a massive company with billions of dollars funneling through it in a very corrupt manner and owned by a bunch of like very corrupt oligarchs and in bed with the U.S. government. And they were coming over there and like literally exploring for natural gas and bringing fracking companies over there. It's all about fucking money. It's so obvious. And they're so mired in it now that we're having this proxy war there now. So, and Zelensky just took like $40 million for himself.
Right. Right. Let's look at this, this war that we are 100% responsible for. Trump, whether people like him or not, had pretty good results and had everything calmed down pretty much. In the Ukraine, between the Ukraine and Russia. And he had open channels of communication with Putin. And then because he had open channels of communication with one of the three top leaders in the world, being whoever our president is, Putin and Xi Jinping, right? They're the three big dogs. And he has a working relationship with Putin, and he got absolutely vilified for having a relationship with a country that has the largest nuclear arsenal on earth and is a direct threat to us. And he had an open relationship with Putin that was actually made the planet safer.
That's why if you tell me you vote Democrat, I just think you must be mentally challenged, because, or you're just a massive hypocrite, because you're supposed to be the party about peace. That at least that's the way we grew up. You're supposed to be the party that's against the wars. And yet you can support it. You can't wait to swallow a freaking, military industrial complex dick any chance you get. You're just like, let me get some more. And I don't get it. Like, why? How are you Democrats so into these wars? And why do you keep electing these warmongers and then supporting all this shit? It's what happened? How did this get flipped? That's so bizarre to me.
Well, so you remember, so in the 1960s, during the civil rights movement, the Democrats did a really good job of spin doctoring, making it seem like these were all Dixiecrats and the Republicans really didn't have anything to do with this because the parties flipped, and there's no supporting evidence for that at all. It's total horseshit. And if you actually look at the record, only one senator switched sides during that entire era. But something is actually happening now and has been going on for a while. The real flip is the Democrats during the 90s under Bill Clinton and continuing through today have become the party of let's absolutely go to war and kill motherfuckers as often as we can. That's what they do. They cannot get enough war. They want war so bad and they cannot stop. This is treasonous against our own country by this administration, simply for the fact you have no act of Congress to be able to even be there to begin with. And now we're finding out that we have boots on the ground. The entire amount of money that previous to this proxy war that we started, that they were spending on their military in the Ukraine was about $10 billion. We've already given them $120 billion. And now we want to give them more. They have 10 times the amount of money that they were defending their country with, and somehow they're still getting slain 7 or 8 to 1. They're getting just demolished. And oh, by the way, the Ukraine is a very small country compared to Russia. Russia can keep sending people, man. As a matter of fact, at the way that they're going, this 7-1 or 8-1, as these documents are showing, the slaughter that's actually going on there, the Ukraine's not going to last but another year or so because they're going to run out of men. They're all just going to be killed, and the Russians are just going to roll in. And by the way, you want to talk about another act of war, blowing up those pipelines? Yeah, we did that. Oh, that's an act of war, right? And again, no act of Congress. Why Biden and the people in his administration aren't sitting in Leavenworth right now waiting for trial is more shocking to me than anything else.
It's an act of war. It's an act of terrorism. It's an act of environmental terrorism. It on so many levels, it's so fucked up. And
they're still defending this guy.
Yeah.
For the life of me, I can't understand what's happened. How did the Democrat Party get to the point where they literally are cheering on people to die unnecessarily? It's disgusting.
It's a cult.
Yeah, it is a cult. It's an absolute cult. Yeah. And that's all we have anymore in Washington are two cult groups. You know, it's almost like one Scientology and the other's the Dalai Lama. It's bizarro land everywhere you look. Yep. And I'm getting ginned up now because it pisses me off so bad that we are spilling American blood. We're sending our young men and daughters over to all around the world. We got over 750 bases around the world.
Well, I just want to say for the record that I think that, unlike you, this is why you're wrong, because you think it's the other way around. But I think that Jim Jones would be a way better president than David Koresh. I know you're a Koresh guy, but that's just because you don't understand. Jim Jones is a way better leader. His fucking Kool-Aid is fire.
Look, the only reason I side with David on this one because he was actually the second coming of Christ because he told me so.
And a hell of a guitar player too, apparently.
And a fine guitar player, very fine guitar. I wanted to be in his band. That's the whole reason.
And he will tear the shit out of your old lady too.
And your daughters if you got them.
No, he won't because he's dead.
They're both dead.
True story.
Which, by the way, is the primary reason I like them better than most of the people in this country that are in politics because they're dead and our people aren't. And if we could remove our people, talked about
William Henry Harrison is the very best president of all time. He did less than 30 days and then croaked.
Yes, did us all a favor.
Yep.
So we can fix the problems. Aren't even really hard to fix. The only real problem is they don't want to fix any of these problems because they're living such opulence and they are so god-awful wealthy and have so much power that they're so drunk on that, there's not a chance. Every now and again, we get like a Mike Lee or a Rand Paul or a Tulsi Gabbard who actually makes sense. And then what they do to the best of their ability is drum them completely out of politics altogether. Tulsi Gabbard, I can't imagine if you're a Democrat and you don't like Tulsi Gabbard, then you can't call yourself a Democrat. She's literally the perfect liberal Democrat, generally speaking. And they turned on her so easily. She is the best thing that the Democrats had in that party in a generation or more. And they ran her right out because she told the truth.
Yep.
And they couldn't hack it. They didn't want her around. She is anti-war. She's not a warmonger. She doesn't want a big industrial machine. Now, I don't agree with all her politics, obviously, but I would certainly be far more inclined to vote for a Tulsi Gabbard than even Donald Trump, because I would line up more with her than almost anybody that's in Washington. I like Rand Paul a lot too. And I think Rand Paul has a lot of good ideas. He's his father's son. He's made some mistakes along the way that are at least forgivable enough for me, but he uses smart policy, right? And that's what he is about. And by the way, thank God for Rand Paul. Because of him, we got more of the truth than we probably ever would have when it came to the whole COVID thing. He was relentless, right?
True story.
But how many Republicans turned on him for doing that very thing?
Yeah.
So anybody starts, and that's why they hate Donald Trump so much. Trump started a fight with them and said, I'm going to expose you pieces of shit for what you are. And then they all got their hair up. And then, of course, when he really went after the security theater of Washington, the CIA, the FBI, and all that, as soon as they all turned on him, that was the end of it. And it's never going to stop. They're never going to leave him alone. I don't want Trump to run for president, not because I don't think he's a far better choice than Biden, because he absolutely is, but because he'll never be left alone. There is no chance for the rest of his life. If he were to just step down and walk away right now, they'd back off. But he's going to keep going, and they're never going to stop. They're never going to stop. So if he were to get reelected, all we're going to do is have 4 years of him in court and the press screaming and lying about everything he does. And we're never going to get normalcy again. And then as soon as all these clowns are dead and gone, because they're all up near 80 or past 80 at this point, then we're going to be stuck with pieces of shit like AOC running for president and getting the backing of the DNC. This nightmare is never going to come to an end.
No, Gavin Newsom will be here soon. And then you can just go ahead and welcome the bugs and the paperless money, and all the World Economic Forum's machinations will be delivered to us. So
if I run for president, Ted, I promise you, we'll go to all electric cars in a week.
Right. Well, on that wonderful note, we're over an hour in here, buddy. Do you want to start a wrap here? Or?
Oh yeah, we can start wrapping up. I want to say one thing though.
Yeah.
One, I have a pet peeve I got to get off my chest here.
Yeah. What you
For
got?
anybody who. It drives me crazy that when you try to read any story on social media or the internet, that it takes them 1,000 words to get to their damn point. It drives me literally insane. Get to your fucking point, right? I don't have time to read a novel to find out. So I read an article the other day. I skimmed through it because I was just trying to get to the point. It was just a basic scientific article. They found an exoplanet and actually measured how hot it was there or lack of heat for the first time. I don't know what the temperature was because they never said what it was. Literally made my head almost explode. So if I get into any article now and I skim through the first 3-4 paragraphs and they still haven't even begun to talk about what the article is about, I'm done. It's over. See you later.
The worst things are like reviews or like recipes. Like you'll look up a recipe for some cookies or something, and it'll start off by saying, now this recipe uses a lot of butter. I remember when my first experience with eating butter when I was 4 years old. In fact, I didn't just eat it. My grandmother churned her own butter. I remember learning how to churn butter when I was 4. By the time I was 6, I could even pick up the milk fat and pour it in the churn. And just like go into this fucking long ass story about nothing that has anything to do with the recipe. And I'm like scrolling. Where the fuck is the recipe?
And then when you actually get to the recipe, it doesn't even need butter.
I know I said butter, but we prefer margarine. So
right? It drives me insane. The sports articles are starting to do the same damn thing. They start talking about a player and they start with when he was born, all the way through Pee Wee football and high school and college. And he's now in his 10th year of his career and all his accolades. And it's like, if you're reading this article, you already probably know all this shit. Why are you telling me again? And it's because clicks and scrolling and
that's it,
money.
Man. That's it. The longer you're on the site, the more money they can the more revenue they can generate, the more, clicks if you have to, like we talked about before with those websites that, you go on there and it's like, look at these 10 pictures of so-and-so. And then you're like, you see one and they're like, but the next one's even better, but you have to like switch to the next page and keep scrolling to the next page.
The worst ones are when they have The worst ones are when they show a celebrity, like let's say Scarlett Johansson, and we caught her without her makeup and she looks so disgusting, right? You're 78 pictures in, you still haven't seen Scarlett Johansson, and you're never going to because they don't have that picture. But you just click through 78 friggin' pictures and they made a penny every time, and 80 billion guys on earth are doing it right at the same time, so they're making all kinds of money. And here's the rub.
Scarlett.
Here's the rub. When you're there, it's worth the effort though for Scarlett. But if you are, the rub is
when I look at Scarlett, I think about rub.
Yes, that's why I had to pause. So, but that was a really poor choice of words. So, the rub still is that when you get caught in that loop of scrolling and doing that, they keep feeding you information about that very thing. Keep you scrolling through other stories. Yep. It's a loop that you can't get out of unless you hit that little the little 3 dot thing, and it says, "I never want to see this again."
Right.
And then they'll just send you something else that'll loop you back into something. It's just crazy. But boy, that's a pet peeve of mine. I had to get off my chest because that is driving me crazy. It's constant on almost everything I read now. I can't even get to the point, and it drives me insane.
We should start doing.
And you know why that works? Real quick, and I have a theory about why they do this, other than the money. It's because the last generation, they're so vapid and they don't need any facts or information. All they care about is their feelings. That's also another reason why all this is happening, because nobody in that age group can get to the fucking point anyhow. And they're all used to having conversations like that. So it seems so normal to them.
Fair enough. So I don't even know what I was going to say to that, but
Gen X rules.
That's a true story. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, why can't we just have a bunch of Gen Xers and get rid of everybody else? No.
Right.
All right. So,
well, we could
before I
go
step too much further into it, well, folks, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Mancast, but I would like to take this opportunity to preview what's to come next week. Ed and I will be giving you our draft preview spectacular, our episode where we will be giving you our draft board for the first round of the NFL draft, and we will show you how we think it's going to shake out, and we're going to make sure that that is published previous to the draft, and then we will allow ourselves to be judged against the other experts, that the talking heads that you see on TV, and see how we make out against them. So
yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So we'll put our own scoring, and then we'll go head to head with everybody. And the reason to do this is just to prove that people who just simply have a passion about something, which Chad and I both do for football, that as long as you're paying attention, these guys who are getting paid just crazy money to be these procrastinators, or however that word goes. Thank you. That they're literally full of shit. They're just making a guess like anybody like Chad or I can do, and they're no better at it than we are. Or, by the way, audience, or you, if you really like football that much, you can come to the same conclusions. If you watch college football, you know who the best players are, and obviously they're going to be at the front end. So it's just a matter of using your brain a little bit and going, well, this team needs this kind of player badly. This is the guy I think fills that hole the best. That's all they're doing. I don't know why they need a whole year to figure all this stuff out, and they spend a gazillion hours at a computer. Chad and I
was going to say they're definitely. I was going to say they're definitely not procrastinators, because they've been doing this shit as soon as they could. I mean, they've been doing it 50,000 times.
I'm literally going to sit down and put my list together in one evening, and I'll do as well or better than them.
Yep.
That's the crazy part.
Yep.
So that's why this is going to be so much fun.
But here's the thing: if you do a new draft board every day for 365 days, one of them is going to be decent, right? You just go back to 7.9 or whatever the version is, and You go, see, I got it. Well, we're going to do one, and we're going to use the same site to do it, and we're going to share that site with you, and we're going to share our scoring regimen with you, and then way you can do it too. So if you, after you watch the episode, and we'll put the, the scoring and everything, and the site that we use in the description of the video, and then you can do it along, and then when we have the following week, you can see how we all made out. So it's going to be fun.
Yep, and score with us, and you can always message us and tell us how you did. That would be very interesting. And for guys who did well, we'll bring it up. We'll talk about it.
Absolutely. And soon we're going to be launching another iteration of the Tortured Man. We'll be doing what's called a friend cast. And we already do a beer cast where I've been doing a lot of beer reviews. If you guys haven't seen that, please check it out. And Ed's going to be collaborating on that with me in the future as well. But soon we'll be doing friend casts where we'll be calling some of our old buddies and bringing them into a sort of lighthearted discussion, but we'll catch up with them a little bit. I'm thinking that Jeff Slavin will probably be our first friend cast guest in a couple of weeks. After we follow up on the draft. So look forward to the launch of that show as well. And with that, guys, thanks for everything. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe if you haven't yet. I think we're good, guys. Eddie, you got anything else?
I'm good, man. It was a good conversation as always. And thanks everybody. Keep tuning in because we'll keep talking.
Amen. With that, later.